On Tuesday, I asked the Department of Home Affairs whether they were the department which developed two documents related to the IRGC dated the 11th of January 2023. One was titled the Statement of Reasons and the other was titled Criminal Code Nomination Form. Nobody in that room could remember whether the Department of Home Affairs developed those documents. So I was wondering whether they might have been developed by the Attorney-General's Department, or if you are unsure of that, whether you know which department they did originate in.
Senator, they were developed by Home Affairs.
That is good to know. I'm surprised that AGD could confirm that and Home Affairs couldn't, but thank you very much for that confirmation and solving that puzzle for me. Senator Watt, who represented the Attorney-General in the Senate, said in regards to the IRGC that the IRGC is a fully formed part of the Iranian state. State actors cannot be listed as terrorist organisations. I'm interested to know what is the criteria that the AGD uses to determine when an entity is considered a fully formed part of a state.
Senator, we would take advice from other agencies on that and get legal advice from AGS.
Is there a legal definition that you use to determine whether something is a fully formed part of a state?
There's not one in the Act itself, in the Criminal Code.
So
we would use the sort of ordinary meaning.
And which agencies would give you advice on that if you were seeking that advice?
I think it would be DFAT.
DFAT, okay.
Possibly
only DFAT?
Intelligence agencies as well.
What was that, sorry, Ms Chidgey?
Possibly intelligence agencies generally as well.
Possibly intelligence agencies. In that case, then, does the AGD intend to have the protocol for listing a terrorist organisation updated to clearly outline that what you call a state actor can't be listed, and to explain the process that you would be going through via other departments to determine whether an entity is a state actor?
No, Senator.
Would Hamas be considered a fully formed part of a state if Palestine was granted statehood today?
I can't answer that question, Senator.
Because you don't know the answer to that question?
That's correct.
Ms Chidgey? Okay.
And it wouldn't be one that was in this department's knowledge.
What was that, sorry?
It wouldn't be something this department could answer.
So, in effect, you would go to DFAT to answer that question?
That's right. We'd seek some advice from them.
So, just to be specific to the IRGC, was it DFAT then that gave you the determination that the IRGC is a fully formed part of a state relevant to that potential listing that we've discussed previously?
It was DFAT-led advice
It was
that we obtained on the IRGC.
It was DFAT-led advice,
yes.
So that information originated with them and they provided that advice to you. And
that's right.
On that basis, the Attorney-General's Department then put in the submission, again, that we've discussed before, to the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Legislation Committee that the IRGC couldn't be listed as a terrorist organisation.
Yes.
Could on notice you provide a copy of that advice to the committee?
We'll take that on notice. I think there may well be some issues with providing it, but we'll take it on notice.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Chidgey. The Coalition has repeatedly offered bipartisan support to the government to take the necessary steps to enable a listing of the IRGC, but we are yet to receive any indication that the government will accept this offer and take action. Minister, what is preventing the Albanese government from asking the Attorney-General's Department to draft potential amendments to the Criminal Code to enable the IRGC to be listed as a terrorist organisation?
I know this is an issue that you've raised a number of times here. The position of the government haven't changed. I think the department have explained the complexities around this. Senator.
I might just add, Senator, the government has taken very strong action through the imposition of sanctions as well, and that this issue about coverage of state entities is an issue that would affect the entirety of that part of the code.
Has the Albanese government ruled out then, Minister, taking any further steps, including amending legislation if you believe that's necessary, to enable a listing of the IRGC?
Oh, I don't really play the rule-in, rule-out game, Senator Chandler. It'd be a matter for the Attorney-General.
The United States has publicly urged allies to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organisation due to its long-standing involvement in terrorist activity and its recent attacks on US forces in the Middle East. Was there a discussion between agencies about this request from our AUKUS allies in October last year to list the IRGC?
I don't think we're aware of that, Senator. Obviously, we take decisions under our listing regime with its legal requirements.
Was the Attorney-General's Department asked to have any input to any response to the US government or any briefings generated to ministers in relation to this request from the United States?
We can take it on notice, but I don't think so.
Yeah, we think not, Senator. If we identify anything else, we'll come back.
Thank you. Which agency provided the Attorney-General the advice that disclosure of the Statement of Reasons and Criminal Code nomination form relating to the IRGC request to be provided to the PJCIS in a committee in confidence basis would or might reasonably be expected to disclose information that would be damaging to Australia's national security?
We provided that advice to the Attorney-General.
The Attorney-General's Department provided that advice. Minister, if the IRGC is such a threat to Australia's national security that the government won't release a document that lists open source information about their activities, why wouldn't it be a priority to ensure that the IRGC can be listed as a terrorist organisation so that we are employing the full range of powers to minimise the risk to Australians, particularly the risk to the Iranian diaspora here in this country?
Well, we've outlined the challenges, Senator Chandler, multiple times to you. The department talked through and mentioned the sanctions that we have taken place in regards to the IRGC. It's something that our position in government is similar to the position that the previous government had in terms of the IRGC as well, I'd point out.
You've said you've outlined the challenges to listing the IRGC, and certainly in our conversation tonight and in our conversation at previous estimates, I recognise the position that the government has put forward in relation to this. But there doesn't seem to have been any effort to overcome these challenges to facilitate a listing of the IRGC.
Senator, what I could add on that is that would involve very significant legal and policy issues, because the way that whole part of the criminal code is constructed, it would have implications for the application of all of those terrorism offences, for example, to armed forces and the use of force by them. To give you an example, so that entire part of the criminal code would be affected. So there'd be a lot that would need to be done for this.
Would that be complicated by the fact that you're taking advice from DFAT in relation to these potential listings?
So I think there are just two different things, Senator. I'm talking about amendments to the legislation. I don't think advice from DFAT complicates that. The issues I'm talking about are significant ones for that whole piece of legislation and the application of all of our counter-terrorism provisions.
Have you provided specific advice to the Attorney-General in relation to the legal complexities as you see them to changing the criminal code to allow listing?
We haven't provided specific advice. We've identified those issues in general terms to the office.
To the office
of the Attorney-General.
Did you proactively provide that information to the Attorney-General's office, or did they ask for it?
I can't recall, Senator.
Could you take that on notice, please,
yes, we'll
Mr.
see.
Duke?
It might have been part of discussions, but we'll see what we can identify.
I would also be interested to know when that advice was provided to the Attorney-General's office, that in effect it would be very long-ranging and difficult in the view of the AGD to amend the criminal code to facilitate a listing.
We'll take that on notice.
Thank you very much. So, to be very clear, I'm keen to know that has the Attorney-General either asked for specific advice or has been given specific advice in relation to this that he's then made a decision on?
We haven't given advice on the amendments to the criminal code.
On the possibility of amendments to the criminal code?
The government gave a response to the committee recommendation, and so I think the Attorney General was aware of that government response, which I think in its terms indicated, I think that we sort of didn't accept a proposal to make amendments to the code. Colleagues might have that in front of them. Yes, so I think there was a recommendation about taking steps, and that was not accepted because of these issues.
Can you just, sorry to get down into the weeds here, but can you just step me through the timeline of that recommendation being made by the committee, the government responding to that recommendation, and when advice went to the AGO in relation to that timeline? Because
so the response was provided in September 2023. We'd need to take, I think, those other dates on notice.
yes, but it was in January 2023 that the AGD provided a submission to the committee inquiry saying that it wasn't possible. So I'm just trying to understand, that was, how did the AGD come to that position in January? Was there further advice provided between January and September when the report was responded to by the government that, in a way, strengthened the government's view that they wouldn't pursue legislative change to facilitate an IRGC listing?
So we'll take on notice what advice specifically we gave between the department providing that submission in January 2023 and the government's response in September 2023.
Yes, and what interactions were had, whether that advice originated within AGD and was sent to the Attorney General's office, or whether it was requested by the Attorney General's office of the AGD.
This is the advice on...
the advice that ultimately informed the view that you've just outlined, that it's too hard to change the criminal code.
Yes, Senator, we'll take that on notice.
Thank you.